You always remember the moment your family finally shows you who they are. Mine happened on a bright Saturday morning, the kind that should have felt warm and ordinary. Instead, it became the day I realized I had been the extra child in my own house. A background character in a story they wrote without me. Started with a text from my sister, Bianca. "Come outside. I want you to film something." I thought she meant a TikTok or a graduation outfit reveal. I had no idea what was waiting in the driveway. When I stepped outside, my mother and father were already positioned like they were hosting a televised event. Dad held his phone toward Bianca. Mom wiped her eyes dramatically. And Bianca strutted forward in a glittery dress she definitely bought with their money. Behind her sat a brand new white BMW 3 Series with a massive red bow strapped across the hood. I froze. For a moment, I truly thought the universe had glitched. My sister was 20. Failed college classes twice. Quit her job after 3 weeks because the manager had negative energy. And now she had a luxury car. "Surprise, baby," my mother squealed. "We wanted your first car to be something special." Bianca screamed and spun around like she had won an Oscar. Then she jumped into Dad's arms while Mom clapped like a malfunctioning seal. I stood there, holding my cracked Android phone, unsure whether to clap or vomit. Dad turned to me finally. "Oh, and don't worry, Mia," he said casually. "We didn't forget about you." He reached into his pocket, pulled out his wallet, and peeled off $20 bill. "For gas money," he said. "For the bus, you know." I blinked. Once. Twice. Trying to understand if this was a prank. "The bus," I repeated. Mom lifted her eyebrows like I was being ungrateful. "Well, sweetie, you don't really need a car. You're responsible. You always figure things out." Bianca snorted. "Yeah, Mia's practically a nun. She doesn't go anywhere." Something cracked inside me. Not a loud snap. More like the quiet break of something that had been strained for too long. I handed Dad back the 20. I didn't say a word. I just turned and walked back inside. Behind me, Bianca yelled, hello? Aren't you going to film my reaction video?" I closed the door gently. Not slammed. Closed. Because when you finally understand your place in someone's life, you don't need theatrics. You just detach. Inside, the house felt different. Like I had been staring at the same room my whole life but never really saw the cracks. Every framed picture was of Bianca. Every trophy shelf was Bianca's. Every story my parents bragged about was Bianca's. And suddenly it hit me like a freight train. They had never planned a life that included me. I sat on my bed and stared at my backpack in the corner. The same backpack I used for work, school, groceries, everything. The same backpack I used to carry groceries home while Bianca took Uber rides my parents paid for. And for the first time in my life, a thought formed so clearly it felt like someone else spoke it. Leave. Today. Now. I didn't argue with it. I didn't overthink it. I didn't wait for an apology that would never come. I stood up, unzipped my backpack, and started packing the pieces of my life that belonged only to me. Clothes. Laptop. Sketchbook. Phone charger. Nothing else. My entire childhood home suddenly felt like a hotel I had accidentally overstayed in. When I zipped the backpack, a strange calm washed over me. Not sadness. Not fear. Just clarity. I walked downstairs. Bianca was revving the BMW engine, shouting, "Mia, come film this for my Insta." Dad was laughing. Mom was wiping another fake tear. None of them saw me walk past them. None of them noticed I was carrying my life on my back. None of them registered the front gate closing behind me. 'Cause when a family doesn't see you as a person, they also don't see you leave. I walked to the bus stop with no destination in mind. Only one truth repeating in my skull like a heartbeat. If they could give her a BMW and give me bus fare, they never planned to keep me. And so I finally stopped staying. The bus ride out of my neighborhood felt unreal, like I had stepped out of someone else's life and into a version of mine that had been waiting in the shadows for years. The city blurred past the windows in soft streaks, but inside me everything was sharp, cold, focused. I replayed the driveway scene in my mind. The BMW bow, the laughter, the $20 bill, and most haunting of all, the way none of them looked at me long enough to notice I was braking. The bus smelled like old vinyl and cleaning spray. Kid kicked the back of my seat. A woman talked loudly on the phone. And yet, somehow, it was the most peaceful moment of my entire life. Because for the first time ever, I wasn't required to shrink myself so Bianca could shine. I wasn't the built-in babysitter. I wasn't the emergency backup daughter. I wasn't the invisible supporting character in my own home. I was simply Mia. And Mia was finally free enough to decide her next step. But freedom is a strange thing. It doesn't always arrive with excitement. Sometimes it arrives with grief for a version of your life you never got to live. I thought about the years I spent helping Bianca with her homework while she scrolled on her phone. How I tutored her through math while she complained that it was a waste of brain space. How I covered her shifts when she didn't feel like working. How I cleaned up her messes, literal and emotional, because our parents said, "Be patient, Mia." She's delicate. Delicate. She was delicate like a hand grenade. And I had been the blast shield. The bus lurched to a stop downtown. People got off, people got on. I stayed in my seat because I didn't know where away was yet. My phone buzzed. A message from Bianca. "Hello? You're being dramatic. Come back and film the TikTok." A second later, another one. "Also, Dad said if you're mad about the car, you need to grow up." I stared at the screen. The words dripping entitlement. At the expectation that I should swallow my feelings like I always did. Then something inside me hardened in a way that felt final. Not brittle. Not fragile. Solid. I turned my phone off. Not silent. Not muted. Off. The world went quiet in a way that felt sacred. Another stop passed. Then another. Until finally a place caught my eye, a small old train station with a weathered sign. I didn't know why, but something about it felt right. Like the beginning of a story I hadn't written yet. I pulled the cord. The bus hissed to a stop. I stepped out into cool air that tasted like possibility. I walked into the station, the sound of footsteps echoing in the tiled hall. A schedule board rattled softly overhead. Trains leaving for towns I had never visited. Places where no one knew I was the other daughter. Places where I could breathe without asking permission. I sat on a bench and took out my wallet. $43 inside. Not enough to build a life, but enough to start one. A woman sat beside me, adjusting the scarf on her neck. She looked at me for a long moment. "You're running from something," she said gently. I didn't answer. She smiled sadly. "That's how I left home too." Her words cracked something in me. A stranger saw me more clearly in 10 seconds than my parents had in 20 years. A train rolled into the station with a metallic roar. People gathered their bags. Someone laughed. Someone argued. Someone hugged goodbye. And I realized something as simple as it was devastating. No one was going to chase after me. No one even knew I was here. No one cared enough to stop me. And that, ironically, was what set me free. My throat tightened. Not from sadness, but from relief. I stood up, walked to the ticket counter, and asked, "How far can I get for $43? Clerk typed for a few seconds. "Cedarville," she said. "A small town 2 hours away. Quiet. Affordable. Forgettable. Perfect." "One ticket to Cedarville," I said. She handed it to me without looking up. A thin slip of paper. But to me it was a key. As I boarded the train, my phone stayed off. My past stayed behind. And my heart, for the first time, felt like it belonged to me. The doors closed with a soft, decisive click. The train lurched forward. And I watched my old life shrink into the distance. Not with regret, but with certainty. 'Cause when your family gives your sister a BMW and gives you bus fare, they don't expect you to drive away. They expect you to stay grateful. Silent. Small. But I wasn't small anymore. And I wasn't staying. Cedarville was the kind of town people described as peaceful when they didn't have to live there. Small shops. Old brick buildings. A single main road with streetlights that glowed a soft orange at night. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt like exactly the place you go when you need to disappear long enough to remember who you are. When I stepped off the train, the air smelled like rain-soaked pavement and pine trees. Platform was nearly empty. Just a couple holding hands. A man sipping coffee. An elderly woman waiting with a fluffy dog that barked at everything. No BMWs with bows in sight. No parents filming dramatic reactions. No golden child posing for attention. Just quiet. Just space. And yet, the moment my feet touched the ground, fear punched me in the gut. Not because I regretted leaving, but because leaving meant I had to confront everything I had ignored for years. I had no job. No apartment. No savings beyond the $43 and a few coins in my pocket. No plan. Just exhaustion wrapped in hope. I walked into the small station lobby and sat with my backpack on my knees. For a moment, I felt 12 years old again. The age when I first understood that Bianca was the daughter they wanted, and I was the daughter they tolerated. The age when Dad bought her a new bike and told me mine still worked fine. The age when Mom spent 3 hours curling Bianca's hair for picture day and handed me a hair tie. That same dull ache returned, familiar, heavy, unwelcome. But instead of letting it swallow me, I exhaled slowly. Because now I wasn't trapped in that house anymore. I could feel the fear and still move forward. I got up and walked outside. A sign near the street read, "Rooms available, Cedar Pines Motel, weekly rates." Perfect. Not safe. Not comfortable. Not glamorous. But perfect. The motel was a 10-minute walk from the station. Its paint peeled in long strips. The neon sign flickered like it was tired of its own job. But the woman at the desk was kind, and she didn't ask too many questions. She looked at my backpack, my tired eyes, the way my fingers trembled slightly. "You running from trouble?" she asked gently. "No," I said after a moment. "Running from disrespect." She smiled like she understood that better than most people. "Room 12, she said. "Pay when you can." Her kindness nearly broke me. I bit the inside of my cheek until the urge to cry passed. I opened the door to my room and found a small bed, a nightstand, and a lamp with a crooked shade. The window overlooked a parking lot with 2 cars and a broken vending machine. It was ugly. It was cheap. It was mine. I dropped my backpack on the floor and sat on the edge of the bed. For the first time since leaving home, I let myself feel the full weight of everything. The betrayal. The humiliation. The years of being overlooked. The BMW bow burning like an afterimage in my mind. Tears came slowly at first. Then all at once. It wasn't a cinematic moment. It was messy. Ugly. Silent. The kind of crying that comes from wounds you forgot were still open. I buried my face in my hands and sobbed until my lungs hurt. Not because I wanted my family back, but because I was grieving the fantasy of the family I never had. The fantasy where parents treat their children equally. The fantasy where birthdays aren't forgotten. The fantasy where love isn't measured in money or gifts. The fantasy where I mattered. But that fantasy died the moment Dad handed me $20 and called it gas money for the bus. When the tears finally stopped, I lay back on the stiff mattress and stared at the stained ceiling. It wasn't home, but neither was the place I had left. My stomach growled. I hadn't eaten since breakfast. I checked my remaining money. $31 after paying for the room. Enough for a cheap dinner and maybe some groceries if I stretched it. I walked to a small diner down the street. The waitress was a middle-aged woman with tired eyes and a warm voice. She didn't pressure me to order more. She didn't rush me. She smiled when I thanked her. It was such a small kindness, but it felt enormous compared to the coldness I grew up with. As I ate, I watched families at other tables. A mom cutting pancakes for her son. Couple laughing over shared fries. A teenager rolling her eyes playfully at her dad's joke. None of them looked perfect. None of them looked wealthy. But they looked connected. Something my family never was, not with me anyway. I finished eating and stepped back into the cool night air. For the first time that day, the fear receded, replaced by something small but strong. Determination. I didn't know how long I'd stay in Cedarville. I didn't know how hard the next few months would be. I didn't know who I would become. But I knew one thing with absolute clarity. I wasn't going back. Not for apologies. Not for holidays. Not for guilt. Not for family that treated me like an afterthought. If they wanted to see me again, they would have to become people worth seeing. And I doubted they were capable of that. I walked back to the motel, each step feeling more stable than the last. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to earn love. I was learning to give love to myself. And that was something no BMW could ever buy. The first week in Cedarville taught me one essential truth about freedom. It isn't glamorous. It's raw. It's uncomfortable. It's waking up in a cheap motel room with thin walls and realizing no one is going to save you. And for the first time, that's a good thing. Every morning I walked the streets with my backpack, hunting for help wanted signs. I applied everywhere. Coffee shops, grocery stores, gas stations, even a tiny bookstore run by a woman who looked like she hadn't smiled since the 1970s. Most places didn't call back. Some turned me down politely. Others looked me up and down like I was suspicious just for existing. But I kept going. 'Cause going back home was no longer an option. I stretched my money until it felt like the fabric would tear. Breakfast was instant oatmeal. Lunch was whatever I could afford from the discount bakery. Dinner was usually nothing. But every sacrifice tasted better than swallowing my pride back home. One morning, while dropping off an application at a cafe, I overheard two employees laughing. I swear, some people just run away from home because their parents told them no once, one said, rolling her eyes. The other shrugged. Yeah, imagine being that dramatic. I walked past them but felt their words slide into the old wound inside me. The wound carved by years of stop being dramatic every time I expressed a feeling. The truth was, leaving wasn't dramatic. Staying had been. That afternoon I got my first call back, from the grocery store on Elm Street. A part-time position stocking shelves at dawn. Minimum wage. Zero glamour. But it was mine. My first step toward independence that wasn't built on my family's crumbs. When I told the motel clerk I'd found a job, she smiled warmly. Good, she said. A routine keeps the demons from knocking too loud. I had no idea what she meant. But in the months that followed, I would come to understand it perfectly. The schedule was brutal. Alarm at 4:30 a.m. Walk 20 minutes in the cold. Clock in at 5 a.m. Lift boxes until my arms shook. Smile politely at customers even when I felt invisible. Invisible. A feeling I knew too well. But at least here, invisibility wasn't personal. It was just lack of attention, not lack of love. And that mattered more than I expected. Every evening after my shift, I returned to room 12. The motel walls echoed with distant arguments and loud televisions. But behind the noise, I found a strange kind of peace. No one compared me to Bianca. No one mocked my clothes. No one told me to be grateful for scraps. And every night, as I lay on the stiff mattress, memories flooded in. Memories that hurt in places I didn't know existed. Like the time Bianca broke her phone and Dad took her immediately to buy a new one, while mine stayed cracked for 6 months because it still works. Or the Christmas when Bianca got a gold necklace and I got a clearance sweater that still had the discount tag on it. Or the college acceptance dinner they threw for Bianca that they never held for me. Each memory hit like a stone thrown at my chest. But instead of burying me, they became fuel. Fuel to rebuild. Fuel to evolve. Fuel to prove to myself, not to them, that I was worth far more than the role they assigned me. One evening, after a particularly exhausting shift, I found a voicemail from my mother. Just one sentence. "Mia, stop this nonsense and come home." My hand tightened around the phone until my knuckles went white. That sentence, the tone, the entitlement, the complete lack of apology, told me everything. She didn't miss me. She missed the convenience I provided. I deleted the voicemail. I didn't cry. Not this time. 2 days later, Bianca texted. A photo of her leaning against the BMW with a pouty face. Caption, "Miss you, sis. Wish you were here to help me set up my camera. Influencing is hard." There it was. The real reason they wanted me back. Not love. Not concern. Labor. I put my phone face down and whispered to myself, "Never again." By the end of the first month, I had saved enough money to leave the motel. Barely. I found a studio apartment the size of a walk-in closet. The landlord, Mr. Hale, was a wiry older man with permanent cigarette breath. He glanced at my application, then at me. "Ever been evicted?" he asked. "No." "Ever missed rent?" "No." "Ever run from drama?" I hesitated. "Yes." He gave a single approving nod. "Good. Drama people ruin walls." And just like that, I had a home. A tiny one. Quiet one. A safe one. The floor creaked. The heater rattled. The faucet leaked. But I loved it instantly. Because for the first time ever, my living space didn't come with Bianca's voice echoing in every corner. Didn't come with my parents' disappointment hanging like fog. Didn't come with expectations chained to my ribs. It was just me. Only me. And that felt like liberation wrapped in cheap wallpaper. As I unpacked my backpack onto the small dresser, I whispered softly, "You made it." Not in a triumphant way, but in a relieved, shaky, gentle way. Like speaking to a version of myself that had been waiting for this moment for years. That night, I sat on the floor with my back against the wall and ate dinner out of a can. And yet, somehow, it was the best meal I'd had in ages. 'Cause it was mine. 'Cause I earned it. 'Cause no one could take it from me. As I drifted to sleep, a single thought settled over me like a warm blanket. This is the beginning of the life they never imagined I was capable of living. The second month in Cedarville was when the real breaking began. Not the clean, decisive break that happens when you walk away, but the messy kind. Kind that sneaks up on you while you're washing dishes or waiting for the bus. The kind that whispers, "Are you sure you're strong enough for this?" First, everything seemed manageable. My tiny studio felt like a safe cocoon. Work was exhausting but predictable. Money was tight but possible. For the first time, my life had a rhythm that belonged only to me. But trauma doesn't leave when you leave the environment where it was created. Follows you quietly. Like a shadow you don't notice until it steps in front of you. Began with small things. A woman at work raised her voice at a coworker and my whole body tensed. A teenage girl rolled her eyes at her mother in the checkout line and I flinched. A car alarm went off outside my window and I felt my throat close. My nervous system kept reacting like my parents were still in the room. I didn't understand it then. But I was still waiting to be punished. Still waiting to be compared. Still waiting to be told I wasn't enough. Then the panic attacks started. Not the dramatic collapsing kind you see in movies. Quiet kind. The insidious kind. Kind where your heart races while your face stays calm. Where your hands tremble while you keep bagging groceries. Where you feel like you're drowning while no one around you notices anything wrong. The first one hit me while I was restocking cereal boxes. My vision blurred. My chest tightened. I couldn't breathe, not fully. Not deeply. The air felt thick, like I was inhaling cotton. For a second, I thought I was dying. Then I heard my mother's voice in my head. "Stop being dramatic, Mia." The same words she'd said when I cried at age 10 because Bianca had taken my birthday gift. The same words she'd said when I begged for help studying while Bianca got a tutor. The same words she'd said when Dad praised Bianca for driving responsibly even though she totaled her old car. The same words she said every time I needed comfort. My knees buckled. I gripped the shelf to stay upright. A coworker walked by and didn't even glance at me. I swallowed hard and forced myself to breathe slow enough not to faint. When I got home, I Googled, "Why does breathing feel scary sometimes?" That was the night I learned the term, complex trauma. Not just one big event, but years of small ones. The years of being unseen. Years of being the second choice. Years of being told your pain is inconvenient. Suddenly everything made sense. The flinching. The anxiety. The fear of making decisions. The guilt when I spent money on anything non-essential. The instinct to apologize for taking up space. I stared at the screen for hours, absorbing every word. Not because I wanted to blame my parents for everything, but because I needed to understand why healing felt like climbing a mountain with no rope. That week, I started writing in a journal. Just small things at first. What I felt today. What I'm scared of. What I learned. What I survived. Pages filled quickly. Not because I had dramatic stories to tell, but because I finally had a space where my voice mattered. One night, after a long shift, I came home to find a note tucked under my door. It wasn't from my parents. It was from my landlord, Mr. Hale. It read, "Noise complaint from your neighbor. Are you okay? Heard crying last night." My cheeks burned with embarrassment. I didn't even realize I had cried loudly enough for someone to hear. The next day, I apologized to the neighbor, a woman in her late 30s with headphones around her neck. She waved her hand dismissively. "Honey, don't apologize. I cry loud too." Then she added, "It takes time to rinse pain out of the spine." I didn't know what that meant, but it stayed with me. And over the next few months, it proved to be true. Even with all this happening, part of me still expected my family to reach out in a real way. Not breadcrumbs. Not guilt trips. Real effort. Real remorse. Real love. But the only messages I got were shallow ones from Bianca. A photo of her holding shopping bags. "Miss you, sis. Wish you were here to help me pick outfits." A video of her revving the BMW. "Baby purrs like a kitten." A selfie at brunch. "Fam day. Where you at?" She wasn't reaching out. She was bragging. Showing off the life she got handed. The life I was never considered worthy of. But the message that shattered something old inside me came from Dad. A simple line. "When you're done with your little phase, come home." Phase. My independence was a phase. My trauma was a phase. My absence was a phase. My decision to protect myself was a phase. But Bianca's irresponsibility, her entitlement, her recklessness, those were never phases. Those were just how she is. I read the text 4 times. Then I blocked his number. My hand shook afterward. Not from fear. From power. I had never blocked my father before. Felt like cutting the final thread between the person I was raised to be and the person I was becoming. That night, something shifted inside me. A new resolve. A new identity. A new beginning. I didn't know it yet, but my healing would soon collide with my past in a way I never expected. Because while I was learning to stand on my own feet, my family's perfect little world was getting ready to crumble. The rise didn't happen overnight. It never does. Came slowly, in small moments that didn't look like victories at first. Began when the grocery store manager, a man named Carter with a coffee addiction and a permanent frown, stopped me during a shift. He pointed at the neatly organized shelves I had finished earlier that morning. "You do clean work," he said. I blinked, unsure if it was a compliment or an observation. "No one else stacks like this," he added. "It's efficient." Efficient. A word I had never heard directed at me growing up. At home, everything I did was either fine or not as good as Bianca. Now suddenly my effort had value. Carter cleared his throat. "You want more hours?" My heart skipped. "Yes." "Good," he said. "Come in tomorrow at 7 instead of 8. I'll train you on inventory." Inventory wasn't glamorous, but it was more responsibility. More trust. More pay. And that mattered. Because now I wasn't just surviving. I was building. In the weeks that followed, I learned how to manage stock, process shipments, and coordinate deliveries. Carter wasn't warm, but he was fair. He didn't praise often, but when he did, it was real. And each time, something inside me healed a little. One afternoon, after a particularly chaotic delivery, he looked at me and said, "You ever thought about supervising?" I thought he was joking. Me? The invisible girl? The background character? The child who got bus fare instead of a car? I don't know, I said. "You should," he replied. "You have a good head." A good head. Compliment felt foreign. Like putting on clothes in a size you never believed you could fit into. That night, as I sat at my small kitchen table eating soup from a can, I let the words echo in my mind. "You have a good head." It didn't feel like flattery. It felt like truth. A truth I had been denied for years. Outside my window, Cedarville was quiet. Life was simple. Predictable. Manageable. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for someone to take everything away from me. One morning, on my way to work, I stopped at the small bookstore I had applied to when I first arrived. The Help Wanted sign was still in the window. The owner, the woman with the permanent 1970s scowl, looked up as I walked in. "You again," she said. "Yes." "You still need work?" "Not exactly," I replied. "But I love books." Her eyebrows rose. "Sit." I did. We talked for 20 minutes. Mostly about the smell of old books, the sadness of forgotten stories, and why certain novels feel like home. When I stood to leave, she said, "Come Saturdays. 10 to 4. Store credit for now. Pay later." It wasn't money, but it was community. A place where my mind mattered. I started spending every Saturday surrounded by pages that held more empathy than my family ever had. Books didn't judge me. Books didn't compare me. Books didn't tell me to stop being dramatic. Books listened. Silently. Patiently. The bookstore became my second home. And its owner, her name was Ruth, became something I hadn't realized I needed. A mentor. Ruth didn't ask for my life story. She didn't pry. She simply observed. Listened. And every so often, she offered a comment that felt like it had been carved from stone. One Saturday, as we were shelving a box of classics, she said, "You move like someone who's been taught to take up less space than she deserves." I froze. She didn't look at me. She simply continued shelving. After a long silence, she added, "You won't realize it now, but one day your spine will remember how to stand tall." Her words lodged in my chest like a seed. A painful one, but a seed nonetheless. Slowly, I started changing small things. I spoke louder when someone didn't hear me the first time. I stopped apologizing every time someone bumped into me. I walked with my shoulders slightly back instead of curled inward. Confidence wasn't a transformation. It was a daily rebellion. 3 months after arriving in Cedarville, Carter called me into his office. He pointed at a clipboard. "Position opening," he said. "Assistant inventory lead. You want it?" My breath hitched. "Yes," I said immediately. "Then it's yours." As I walked out, I felt a warmth spread through my chest. A warmth I had never felt growing up. The warmth of being wanted for my ability, not my silence. The warmth of being valued for who I was, not who I wasn't. That evening, I bought myself something I had never bought before. A new blanket. Soft. Warm. Yellow. A color that felt like sunlight. It wasn't expensive. But when I spread it over my bed, my whole room felt brighter. Safer. More mine. I wrapped myself in it and whispered to the empty room, "Look at you." Building a life from scraps. For the first time since leaving home, I felt proud. Not for escaping, but for rising. And just when I thought my past could no longer reach me, it did. In the most unexpected way. 'Cause while I was becoming someone new, my family was beginning to unravel. It started subtly, the way cracks always do. Not with a dramatic explosion, but with tiny fractures in the perfect image my parents had spent years polishing. The first sign came in the form of a message from an unknown number. A simple text. "Did you really leave home?" No greeting. No name. Just the question. Before I could respond, another message came. "It's Bianca. Mom won't give me your number, so I used Dad's phone. Please answer." I stared at the screen, unsure whether to laugh or feel sorry for her. The girl who once flaunted her BMW like a trophy was suddenly quiet, uncertain, hesitant. I didn't answer. I set the phone face down and returned to unpacking boxes at work. But that night, curiosity gnawed at me. What could Bianca possibly want? The answer came the next morning in the form of 3 missed calls from my mother. Then a message from my father. Then another from Bianca. Then another. And another. Texts piled up like falling dominoes. "Call us. We need to talk. Where are you? This is serious. Pick up your phone, Mia." For months, they barely acknowledged my existence. Now suddenly I was the center of their universe. Not because they loved me, but because something had gone wrong. Finally, Bianca sent a message that explained everything. The BMW, there was an accident. My heart didn't drop. It didn't twist. It didn't tighten. Simply paused. Waiting. Another message buzzed through. "Mom and Dad are freaking out. Insurance won't cover what they thought. I need your help. Your help. The same help they never offered me. The same help I begged for my entire childhood. The same help I stopped giving the day I walked away." I didn't reply. Not out of cruelty. Out of self-respect. That evening, as I closed the store with Carter, he noticed my distracted expression. "Family trouble?" he asked. I nodded. He grunted knowingly. "Let me guess. They only remember you exist when they need something." I stared at him. He shrugged. "It's always the responsible one who gets drained the hardest." His words settled into my bones like truth I had always known but never said out loud. When I got home, I found a voicemail from Bianca. She wasn't crying. Bianca never cried unless it benefited her, but her voice trembled in a way that almost made me feel something. Mia. I didn't know what to do. I panicked. Mom and Dad are yelling. They said I ruined everything. They said I should have been more like you. That stopped me. Not because it flattered me, but because it revealed something deeper. For the first time, Bianca wasn't the golden child. She was the disappointment, the burden, the problem. Pedestal had cracked, and she didn't know how to stand without it. A second voicemail came. Please call me back. I know we weren't close. I know Mom and Dad treated us differently. I know you hate me, but I'm scared. There it was. The sentence she had never said in her entire privileged life. I'm scared. For a brief moment, I felt a flicker of the sisterly instinct I used to have. But then reality settled back in. Fear didn't make her innocent. It only made her uncomfortable. And discomfort was the one thing she had never learned to handle. The next day, my father called from his work phone. I let it ring. Then it rang again. And again. Finally, I answered. Where are you? He snapped. No greeting. No concern. Just entitlement. Not home, I said. You need to come back. No, I replied calmly. You don't understand, he barked. There are financial things happening. Things your sister caused. Things we need to fix. I repeated. Yes, he said impatiently. This family works together. A bitter laugh escaped me. This family only works together when I'm the one doing the work. He inhaled sharply, offended. Mia, don't start. Your sister made a mistake. A serious one. But we can get through it. We just need you to be part of the solution. There it is, I whispered. The real reason you're calling. He didn't deny it. Because he couldn't. Truth was too loud. I finally said the thing I had held inside for years. I'm not your backup plan. I'm not your safety net. I'm not your invisible second child. Not anymore. There was a long silence. Then, quietly, my father said words I never thought I'd hear. We shouldn't have given her that car. Just 8 words. But behind them, an entire empire of favoritism shook. He wasn't apologizing. He wasn't acknowledging my pain. He wasn't understanding. He was grieving the consequences of his own choices. And for the first time, he realized Bianca wasn't built to carry any weight. 'Cause they had never taught her how. As the days passed, the messages became more frantic. Longer. Messier. Emotionally chaotic. My mother tried guilt. My heart can't handle this, Mia. Please come home. My father tried authority. You're being childish. Family means responsibility. Bianca tried desperation. Please, Mia. I'll do anything. Please don't leave me alone with them. But none of them tried accountability. None of them said, I'm sorry. None of them said, we failed you. None of them said, we should have treated you with love. And that told me everything. Meanwhile, my own life was quietly moving forward. Steady job. Second job at the bookstore. Small savings account growing little by little. New routines. New confidence. New peace. Their world was collapsing. Mine was stabilizing. And for the first time in my entire life, the balance was shifting in my favor. But fate wasn't finished yet. 'Cause the true breaking point, the moment everything snapped permanently, was still coming. And none of us were ready for it. It happened on a Wednesday afternoon, a day so ordinary that it almost felt cruel when everything changed. I was shelving canned goods when Carter called my name from across the aisle. His tone was different. Tight. Concerned. Someone's here for you, he said. I frowned. No one knew me here. No one should have been looking for me. When I stepped into the front of the store, I froze. My mother stood beside the sliding doors, gripping her purse so tightly her knuckles were white. Her hair was unbrushed, her makeup smudged, her eyes swollen. She looked nothing like the polished woman who once posed proudly beside Bianca's BMW. For a moment, neither of us spoke. She took a shaky step toward me. "Mia," she whispered. Her voice cracked on the second syllable, as if my name was heavier than she remembered. People stared. But I didn't care. Not anymore. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my tone calm but cold. She swallowed hard. "Your father. We need you." There it was again. The same old sentence. Not "we miss you." Not "we were wrong." Not "we're sorry." Just "we need you." I didn't move. I didn't soften. I had waited my whole life for this moment, the moment they finally felt the weight of their own choices. "What happened?" I asked. But my voice held no panic. No urgency. Just distance. Like I was asking about a stranger. She wiped her nose. "Bianca crashed again," she whispered. The words fell out of her mouth like broken glass. "Again," I repeated, emotionless. "Yes," she breathed. This time into a guardrail. I didn't flinch. "Is she hurt?" My mother shook her head. "No." She walked away. But the car didn't. I waited. 'Cause I knew this wasn't the real reason she had shown up here in my new life uninvited. She continued. "The insurance. The company. They won't cover the damage." There it was. Truth behind her trembling voice. The reason she had come crawling to the daughter she never valued. She shifted her weight from one foot to the other. "It was in your father's name. And the payments." I cut her off. "What does this have to do with me?" She blinked fast, stunned by my bluntness. "Mia, we're drowning." I said nothing. Her voice cracked again. "Your father took a loan to help Bianca with her expenses. We thought he could pay it back slowly. But after the accident, the last thread snapped." She burst into tears. Messy, loud, and controlled. The kind of crying she had never shown me, not even as a child. People in the store stared. Carter hovered nearby, unsure whether to intervene. But I didn't move to comfort her. Not because I didn't feel anything, but because I had learned that rushing in to fix everything was exactly how I lost myself in the first place. Finally, she sobbed out the sentence I knew was coming. "We need money, Mia." There it was. The root of everything. The center of their universe. Bianca's BMW. Their pride. Their debts. Their lifestyle. All built on the assumption that I would always be the safety net. "How much?" I asked flatly. Her eyes widened with hope. 10,000. I almost laughed. A humorless, exhausted laugh. $10,000. More money than they ever spent on me in my entire childhood. Money they had thrown at Bianca without hesitation. Money they expected me to magically produce on command. "I don't have that kind of money," I said. "But you're working," she insisted. "Yes," I replied. "At a grocery store. And a bookstore. I'm not a bank." She closed her eyes like the truth physically hurt her. "Mia, please. Your father is falling apart. He doesn't know what to do. Bianca is hysterical. She keeps saying it's all her fault." I raised an eyebrow. "And is it?" My mother hesitated, then whispered, "Yes, but she's not built for this kind of stress." There it was. The sentence that had dictated my entire upbringing. She's not built for stress. She's not built for responsibility. She's not built for consequences. Meanwhile, I was built for everything. Built to endure. Built to carry. Built to minimize myself so she could shine. And now they wanted me to carry them again. To fix a disaster of their own making. To sacrifice my new beginning for their old mistakes. No, I said calmly. Her eyes snapped open. What? No, I repeated. I'm not fixing this. Her mouth fell open as if I had slapped her. Mia, you can't mean that. I do. You're abandoning your family in a crisis. No, I said. I'm letting you face the consequences of the choices you made. She shook her head violently. You're cruel. You're ungrateful. After everything we've done for you, a bitter laugh escaped me. Everything you've done for me? Name one thing. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. But no words came out, 'cause there were none. Not one memory, not one moment, not one sacrifice she could call hers. For a long moment, she just stood there, staring at me as if seeing me for the first time. Not Mia, the quiet daughter. Not Mia, the backup plan. Not Mia, the fixer. But Mia, the woman who had finally stepped out of their shadow. Her voice dropped to a whisper. What happened to you? I held her gaze. You did. Silence fell between us. Heavy. Final. She wiped her face and straightened her purse, collecting the last pieces of her pride. I hope you can live with this, she said sharply. I already am, I replied. She walked out of the store without looking back. And as the automatic doors closed behind her, something inside me settled. Solidified. Strengthened. Because for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilt. I felt free. I didn't know it then, but that moment marked the beginning of the end. Not just of my relationship with them, but of the illusion that we had ever been a family. And soon, very soon, the final truth would explode in a way none of us were prepared for. I didn't expect to hear from my dad. Not after the scene with my mother. Not after refusing the $10,000 they assumed I would hand over without question. But the next evening, while I was folding laundry in the small room I shared with two other girls, my phone vibrated with a number I still recognized by heart. Dad. I stared at the screen, feeling nothing and everything at once. When I finally answered, there was no greeting. Just quiet breathing. Then a voice that sounded 20 years older than I remembered. Mia, he said. He sounded exhausted. Defeated. Like someone who had been beaten by life in a fight he started himself. What do you want? I asked calmly. There was a long pause. Then I need to talk to you. About what? About everything. Another pause. Mia, please. 5 minutes. Something in his tone, not guilt, not manipulation, but something close to actual vulnerability, made me relent. Fine, I said. I'm outside, he replied. I blinked. What? I'm parked outside your building. My heartbeat stumbled. I walked to the small window, pushed the curtain aside, and there he was. Sitting alone in the old sedan, shoulders hunched, hands clasped in front of his face. He looked like a man who had been hollowed out, not by grief, but by truth. I went downstairs slowly, every step echoing the weight of years I had carried without understanding why. When I opened the door and stepped outside, he didn't smile. He didn't rush to hug me. He just looked at me with eyes that finally saw me. Thank you for coming, he said quietly. I nodded once. Talk, I replied. He ran a hand over his face. I'm not here to ask for money, he said. Instant relief washed through me, followed by suspicion. Then why are you here? To explain, he said. To tell you things I should have told you a long time ago. I crossed my arms. Go on. He inhaled slowly. Then, you're right. About everything. I froze. People like my father didn't say words like that. Not to me. Not ever. He kept going. You were always the one we leaned on, the one we assumed would survive anything. I stiffened. There it was, the old script. But he raised his hand. Please. Let me finish. I said nothing. He continued. You want to know why we treated Bianca differently? Why she got everything and you? He swallowed hard. You got the leftovers? Cold wind stung my cheeks. But his words burned hotter. Yes, I said. I'd like to know. He looked down at his hands. Because your mother. He hesitated. Your mother always said you didn't need as much. That you were too independent. That spoiling you would ruin you. I blinked, shocked. That's not an explanation, I said sharply. That's an excuse. He nodded slowly. You're right. It is. But it's also the truth. He leaned back against the seat. When you were little, he began, whenever you wanted something, new shoes, a field trip, art supplies, you always said, it's okay, I don't need it. Even when you did. I pressed my lips together. I remembered that. I remembered the ache behind those words. I remembered learning young that wanting things meant disappointment. And Bianca, he continued with a heavy sigh, she cried when she didn't get what she wanted. She screamed. She threw herself on the floor. She made everything impossible until she got her way. A bitter realization crept in. So you rewarded her for being difficult, I said. We rewarded her for being loud, he corrected. And punished you for being quiet. The world tilted. My throat tightened. But he wasn't finished. There's something else, he said. Something heavy. Something he had carried alone. Something he was finally ready to drop. He closed his eyes for a moment. Then he whispered. We were afraid of losing her. My eyebrows knit together. What do you mean? He swallowed. When Bianca was 6, she had a seizure. A bad one. We almost lost her. The doctors warned us she might have neurological issues growing up. Emotional instability. Anxiety. Maybe worse. My breath caught in my chest. I had never heard this. Not once. Not in all my years living under the same roof. We hid it, he said. Your mother didn't want her labeled. Didn't want anyone thinking she was broken. So instead of treating the problem, he looked up at me, shame flooding his features. We treated her like glass. Something inside me cracked. Not pain. Not anger. But clarity. You built her world around softness, I said quietly, and built mine around responsibility. He nodded. Yes. And you never noticed that I needed softness too. His voice broke. I see that now. A long silence stretched between us. Cold air. Car headlights. Years of unspoken truths settling between our feet. Finally, he whispered, I'm sorry, Mia. I'm so damn sorry. My chest tightened. Not because his apology healed everything, but because it was the first real one he'd ever given me in my entire life. But then he said something that changed everything. Something that explained years of imbalance. Something that made my knees weaken. There's more, he said. There's something else you don't know. I stared at him, bracing myself. He looked up with eyes full of regret. You weren't supposed to raise yourself, he said quietly. We were supposed to raise you. My heart dropped. What does that mean? It means, he whispered, Bianca wasn't the only one we were afraid of losing. The world seemed to stop. Even the wind stilled. 'Cause the look in his eyes said there was a secret buried deep beneath everything. A secret that explained not just favoritism, not just neglect, but the core of why they failed me. Dad, I said, my voice shaking for the first time in years. What aren't you telling me? He exhaled shakily. The truth, he whispered. One we should have told you long ago. And then, right there in the cold, under a flickering streetlight, he told me something that shattered the foundation of everything I believed about my childhood. Mia, he said slowly, like he was afraid the truth might break in his mouth, the reason we treated you differently is because you came into our lives differently. My stomach nodded. What does that mean? He inhaled deeply, his breath shaky in the cold night air. You weren't planned, he said. My heart stuttered. Every child wonders that at some point, but the way he said it carried a weight that didn't feel normal. Lots of children aren't planned, I said stiffly. That doesn't explain years of neglect. He nodded. You're right, but that's not the whole story. He looked down at the steering wheel like he couldn't face me. Your mother, she didn't want another child. The words sliced through my chest like a blade made of ice. I blinked slowly, feeling the world tilt. She didn't want me? I whispered. Closed his eyes. She was overwhelmed with Bianca. She was terrified after the seizure. She didn't want more responsibility. She said she couldn't handle another baby with possible complications. Tears stung my eyes despite my effort to stay composed. So why did you have me? Because, he whispered, I wanted you. The answer hit me like a physical impact. Hard. Unexpected. Unsteadying. You wanted me? I asked quietly. He nodded. I did. I wanted another child. I wanted a chance to be a better father than mine ever was. I wanted. His voice cracked. I wanted a family that felt whole. I stared at him, speechless. You argued about it, I said slowly. Yes, he admitted. 4 months. But I insisted. I promised her I would handle everything. That you wouldn't be her burden. That you would be my responsibility. A horrible realization dawned on me. So she resented me from the beginning, I whispered. He swallowed. Yes. And you let her. His silence answered for him. He scrubbed a hand over his face. I failed you. I failed both of you. I thought I could balance it. That she would grow to love you. But instead, he exhaled shakily. Instead, she withdrew from you. And I let it happen. Anger and heartbreak twisted inside me like a storm. You let her treat me like a chore, I said. He nodded. You let her give Bianca everything while I got nothing. I know. You let me raise myself while you catered to her anxieties. I know. You let me believe something was wrong with me. His voice broke completely. There was never anything wrong with you, Mia. I stared at him, trembling. Then why did you treat me like I didn't matter? He looked older than I had ever seen him. Because I was a coward. Silence fell between us. A deep, hollow silence filled with every moment of my childhood I couldn't understand until now. He continued quietly. I thought protecting Bianca meant keeping her world calm, predictable, easy. And that meant giving her everything she wanted. And what about me? I asked. You were strong, he said. The old excuse. The dagger dressed as a compliment. You were always so independent. You never complained. You never cried. You never asked for anything. Because no one listened when I did, I snapped. He nodded, eyes shining. I know that now. He took a deep breath. There's one more thing. My pulse quickened. What? When you were little, he said slowly, you were happy, curious, fearless. But the more your mother ignored you, the more you withdrew. I should have stopped it. I should have fought for you. I should have chosen you. His voice cracked. I am so sorry I didn't. Tears welled in my eyes, but they didn't fall. Not yet. Instead, I whispered the question that had lived inside me for years. Was I loved? He didn't answer at first. Not because he didn't know, but because the truth was heavy. Too heavy. Finally, he said, I loved you. From the moment you were born. But I didn't show it the way a father should. I let fear and guilt and resentment ruin everything. Resentment. The word sat heavy. Whose resentment? I asked. He hesitated. Your mother's, he said softly. She blamed me for pushing her into having you. She blamed you for being a responsibility she didn't choose. And she blamed herself for not loving you the way she loved Bianca. My breathing faltered. But love isn't something you choose, I whispered. I know, he said quietly. But she never understood that. I wrapped my arms around myself as if holding together something breaking. So she decided that treating Bianca like a princess and me like a backup was balance? He shook his head. No. She didn't decide. She reacted. She was scared. She clung to Bianca because Bianca needed constant attention. And she assumed you didn't. That's not love, I said. No. It's fear disguised as love. He looked straight at me then. Mia, you were never unwanted by me. You were never a mistake. But I failed to protect you from becoming collateral damage in a family that was already broken. My throat tightened. So, what do you want from me now? He looked down, ashamed. Nothing. I just needed you to know the truth. Because you deserve to understand why your childhood felt the way it did. I stared at him, feeling a strange mixture of closure and devastation. You should have told me years ago, I said quietly. I know. You could have saved me so much pain. I know. You could have stopped her from hurting me. His voice dropped to a whisper. I know. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Cold wind wrapped around us like a reminder of everything we could never get back. Finally, I said the words he had been waiting for and dreading. Thank you for telling me. But it doesn't fix things. He nodded, tears in his eyes. I didn't expect it to. I'm not coming home, I added. I know. But I'm not running anymore either. He looked up. And for the first time in my life, he didn't look like the powerful man who held the family together. He looked human. Fallible. Broken in all the ways his choices had carved into him over the years. Mia, he said softly. Yes. I hope someday you can forgive me. I swallowed. Maybe someday, I whispered. But not today. He nodded, accepting it with a quiet dignity I had never seen in him. Then he placed something on the dashboard and pushed it toward me. A small, worn photo. Me. As a baby. In his arms. Both of us smiling like the world hadn't yet taken shape. I kept this in my wallet for 20 years, he said. Because that was the happiest day of my life. I took the photo with trembling fingers. And for the first time in a long time, the ache inside me softened. Not healed, not erased, but softened. Goodbye, Dad, I said gently. Goodbye, Mia, he whispered. And as I walked back toward my building, I realized something important. The truth didn't break me, freed me. But there was still one final confrontation waiting. One person whose reckoning had not yet arrived. My mother. And when it came, it would change everything. The next morning, I woke up to 20 missed calls, all from my mother, and 5 messages from Bianca that ranged from apologetic to frantic. But I didn't answer any of them. Not yet. Not until I was ready. Dad's confession still echoed in my skull like a haunting melody I couldn't shut off. Unplanned. Unwanted by her. Resented. Protected by no one. Loved quietly by one parent and ignored loudly by the other. It explained everything. Every cold glance. Every dismissive comment. Every time she told me to stop being dramatic when I was hurting. Every time she praised Bianca for something I had done first. Every time she made me feel like I was in the way. For the first time in my life, I wasn't confused. I was angry. Real, pure, cleansing anger. Late that afternoon, as I walked home from my shift, I found a familiar car parked outside the building. A luxury SUV. The one she drove everywhere like a badge of superiority. And there she was, standing beside it, arms folded tightly, eyes red-rimmed but determined. My mother. She spotted me immediately. "Mia," she called, her voice sharp, strained, urgent. "We need to talk. I'd been expecting this." But nothing could have prepared me for the storm behind her eyes. I stopped several feet away, keeping distance. "Why are you here?" I asked coldly. She drew in a shaky breath. "I spoke to your father." "Good for you." "Mia, don't do that," she snapped automatically, like control was her second language. I raised an eyebrow. "What do you want?" She pressed her lips together. Then, in a voice that trembled against her own pride, she said, "You made your father cry last night." I stared at her. "That's what concerns you?" "No," she shot back, but her voice cracked. "Yes," I corrected softly. "That's exactly what concerns you. Not the truth. Not the years of damage. Not the cruelty. Just the fact that Dad cried." Her jaw tightened. "Your father is a sensitive man," she said stiffly. "No," I replied. "He's a man who finally admitted what you never would." She flinched. "I didn't know he told you that." I took a step forward. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" She looked away. Her face tipped toward the cracked pavement like the truth was too heavy to carry. "It wasn't something you needed to know." I stared at her in disbelief. "It was about me." "You were a child," she snapped. "You wouldn't have understood." I felt my voice rising despite myself. "I understood that you didn't love me." Her head jerked up in shock. "That's not true." "Then say it," I challenged. "Say you loved me." Silence. A long, devastating silence. She opened her mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. But nothing came out. My chest tightened painfully. "Exactly," I whispered. "You can't say it." Because it was never true. She stepped forward suddenly, panic flooding her face. "Mia, listen to me." "No," I cut in. "For once, you listen." Her lips trembled. And then, for the first time in my entire life, she was quiet. I took a breath that tasted like fire and salt and years of swallowed pain. "You treated me like a responsibility you resented," I said. "You treated Bianca like a treasure. You coddled her. You protected her. You gave her everything." My mother's eyes glistened, but I didn't stop. Not now. Not when the truth was finally breaking through the cracks. "And me," I continued. "You gave me nothing. Not support. Not affection. Not attention. You didn't even give me the basics a parent owes a child." She shakingly reached for her necklace. A nervous habit I recognized from childhood. "I tried," she whispered. "No," I said sharply. "You didn't. You didn't try with me. You didn't want me. You didn't bond with me. You didn't like me. You barely tolerated me." She looked like I had slapped her. But she didn't deny it. And that hurt worse than every cold moment of my childhood combined. I kept going. Because once the truth started spilling, it couldn't stop. "You know what hurts the most?" I said. "That you never apologized. Not once. Not even after Dad told me everything." She swallowed. "You weren't supposed to find out. Because it made you look bad?" "Because it wasn't your burden," she snapped. "No," I said, my voice breaking. "It was my burden. Every single day. Every single year. Every single moment you looked at me and saw a mistake. Her face crumpled. Mia, you were not a mistake. I lifted my eyebrows. But I wasn't wanted. Silence. Be honest, Mom, I said quietly. If Dad hadn't insisted, would you have had me? She closed her eyes. A tear slid down her cheek. No, she whispered. I wouldn't have. The ground felt like it dropped beneath me. Even though I had known, hearing it out loud broke something. Something small. Something tender. Something I had been protecting for years without realizing it. I took a shaky breath. And you never forgave me for existing. Mia, that's not. It is, I cut in. It always was. She reached toward me suddenly, desperate. Mia, listen to me. I was young. I was overwhelmed. I was afraid. I didn't know how to love you without feeling guilt. Guilt, I repeated, stunned. Why guilt? She pressed a hand over her mouth like the confession might spill out faster than she could stop it. Then she dropped her hand. And the truth came pouring out. Because every time I looked at you, she whispered, I remembered that I didn't want you. And I felt ashamed. And angry at myself. And I took it out on you. My knees almost buckled. You punished me, I whispered. For being born? She shook her head frantically. No, no. Not punished. I focused on Bianca because she needed me. Because she was fragile. Because something in me wanted to overcompensate. And then the gap grew. And then it was too late. And I didn't know how to fix it. And you were already so strong. So self-sufficient. You didn't need me. I did, I cried. The words tore out of me like a scream trapped for decades. I did need you. I needed a mom. I needed someone to hold me. To ask what was wrong. To care. I needed you. And you weren't there. Tears poured down her face. I know. I know. And I can't fix the past. You don't even understand what you did, I said. She wiped her cheeks with shaking fingers. I want to, she whispered. I'm trying. I exhaled slowly, feeling a strange calm settle in my bones. I didn't come here for an apology, I said. Because nothing you say can erase the years I lost. She sobbed softly. I know. But I came to tell you this, I said firmly. I am done trying to earn your love. I'm done begging for scraps of affection. I'm done competing with Bianca for something you never planned to give me in the first place. Her face fell apart. Mia, please don't walk away. I already did, I said. And you didn't notice until you needed something from me. She reached toward me again. Mia. I stepped back. No, I said. This time you don't get to reach for me only when you're scared. She broke then. Truly broke. She covered her face and sobbed into her hands, shoulders shaking violently. For the first time ever, I saw her not as the cold, controlled woman she had always been, but as someone drowning in her own choices. I turned away, my heart pounding with pain and closure and something that felt almost like freedom. But before I walked inside, she whispered one last thing. Words so soft I almost missed them. Words I never thought I would hear from her lips. Mia, I did love you. I just didn't know how. I didn't turn around. I didn't answer. I didn't give her the forgiveness she suddenly wanted. I just whispered, Goodbye, Mom. And for the first time in my life, I meant it. For 2 days after confronting my mother, my phone stayed strangely quiet. No angry messages. No guilt-laced paragraphs. No manipulative voicemails. Just silence. Kind of silence that feels like everyone is holding their breath. Waiting. Watching. Recalculating their next move. Then, on a rainy Thursday evening, I got a knock on my apartment door. Not frantic. Not aggressive. Just gentle. I opened it to find Bianca standing there with a hooded jacket soaked through and mascara smudged under her eyes. She looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically. Emotionally. Like her pedestal had finally collapsed, and she didn't know how to stand on solid ground. "Mia," she said, voice trembling, "can I come in?" I hesitated for a heartbeat. Then I stepped aside. She walked in quietly, dripping water onto the cheap carpet, hugging herself like she was holding her ribs together. We sat at the small table by the window. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The rain filled the silence for us. Finally, she looked up. "I heard what happened," she whispered. "With Mom." I said nothing. She swallowed. "And with Dad." Still nothing. Her eyes glistened. "I didn't know," she said. "I swear, Mia, I didn't know any of it." She wasn't lying. I could see that in the way her voice cracked. Her whole world had been built on a foundation of lies too, just different ones. Where mine were neglect and silence, hers were distortion and favoritism. She clasped her hands together tightly. "They told me everything was equal between us. That you were independent. That you preferred being alone. That you were different." My jaw clenched. "Different how?" Her cheeks flushed in shame. "They told me you didn't like affection. That you didn't want attention. That you didn't need love." The words hit like a brick to the chest. So that's what they told her. That's how they justified it. By painting me as a child who didn't want to be held. Didn't want to be seen. Didn't want to be loved. "That's not true," I said quietly. "I know," she whispered. "I know that now." Tears slid down her cheeks. "They made me think you were the problem, Mia. That you were cold. That you didn't care about anyone." I stared at her. "Bianca, you believed them." She nodded, sobbing softly. "I was a kid. And they were my parents. I believed everything they said. And when I saw you keeping your distance, I thought it meant they were right." I leaned back slowly. And for the first time in my life, I understood something I had never considered. Bianca wasn't my rival. She was just as misled as I was. Shaped by lies. Boiled by overprotection. Poisoned by favoritism. She reached across the table and took my hand without asking. Her fingers were cold and shaking. "Mia, I'm sorry," she whispered. "For all of it. For everything. I didn't know. I didn't see you. I didn't try." A lump formed in my throat. She continued. "And I don't expect you to forgive me right away. Or to love me. Or to want me in your life. But I want to be better. I want to know you. The real you. Not the version they taught me." It was strange, sitting across from her. The girl who got everything. The girl I spent years resenting. The girl who lived a life built on the pieces missing from mine. But now she looked like someone rebuilding from rubble. And for the first time, I didn't see the princess. I saw the child they raised her to be, delicate, confused, and groomed to depend on their approval for survival. "Bianca," I said softly, "I'm not going to pretend we didn't grow up differently. 'Cause we did. And it hurt." She nodded. "I know. But that wasn't your fault." Her head shot up, eyes wide. "It wasn't." "No," I said. "It was theirs." She burst into tears, letting out a sound that came from deep inside, something old and buried finally breaking free. I didn't reach forward. Not out of coldness, but out of respect. Because healing wasn't instant. It wasn't performative. It wasn't a hug slapped on top of years of emotional fractures. For several minutes, she wiped her face. "I want to start over," she whispered. "As sisters." I nodded slowly. "We can try." The relief that washed over her face was so raw it made my heart twist. Then she pulled something out of her bag. A small envelope. She slid it toward me. "What's this?" "Open it." Inside was a check. For $10,000. My breath caught. "I talked to Dad," she said. "He told me what they asked of you. And I told him if he ever asked you for money again, I was done with them. Then I told him this should have been yours from the beginning." I stared at her. "I don't want your money, Bianca." "It's not mine," she said. "It's theirs. And they owe you. This isn't charity. It's correction. I didn't take it. Not yet. But I didn't refuse it either." She stood slowly, adjusting her wet jacket. "I'm not here to fix everything," she said. "I'm here to begin fixing myself." She walked to the door, then turned back one more time. "Mia." "Yes. You deserved better. I hope someday I can be part of giving you better." After she left, I sat in the quiet for a long time, listening to the rain, feeling the weight of everything that had finally come to the surface. My parents faded out of my life after that. Not dramatically, and not with a fight. Just distance. A quiet understanding that they no longer had access to me. Not the version they controlled. Not the version they ignored. Not the version they manipulated. Not any version of me. Bianca and I spoke more. Slowly. Carefully. We weren't healed sisters. But we were honest ones. Months passed. I earned a promotion. Got a better place. Started therapy. Started breathing differently. Started living differently. Started seeing myself not as the forgotten daughter but as someone who survived being forgotten. And one evening, as I sat on my balcony watching cars pass under streetlights, I realized something powerful. I didn't drive away from home that day because they didn't give me a BMW. I drove away because they never gave me the love a child deserves. And choosing myself was the first real luxury I ever had. Now I had distance, peace, a growing savings account, a healthier heart, a real relationship with my sister, and a life built entirely by me. And when I looked at the night sky, I whispered the final truth of my story. They gave her the car, but I took the freedom.